Hey everybody, welcome to Enliven Wellness. My name is Tessa Gurley and I am super honored to be here, especially today because we have the amazing Steven Harkins from North American Herbs and Spice to talk today about how your synthetic supplements are impeding or killing your detox and the difference between synthetic and natural compounds. So Steven, welcome, and my viewers, to everybody out there who's listening, and I love you all so much. Let's get this good information out there, Steven, so that my viewers can feel empowered and have some practical, empowering information to improve their health and live a vital life overall. So, welcome, Steven. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started? I mean, I know that my viewers would love to hear, what you have to say. Who are you, and who is this dude from North American Herbs and Spice, and what's your passion? What got you into this in the first place?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on, Tessa. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad we're doing this. And just a background about me. I'm 31. I started with North American Herb and Spice after a personal health journey led me here, and we started 3 years ago with the company. I was just a health enthusiast, like most people who are listening in, and on my journey, and I was just really impressed at the company. As a user of the products myself, I just found that they really had a great, pure, ethical example of health supplements, and I wanted to be a part of that, and I had the opportunity. I started as a sales representative, talking to different health food stores across the country, getting to know the industry, going to different trade shows, just learning different things about how the industry operates and how we were different as a company and what we were doing differently. And I was so fascinated. I just loved every minute, was learning as much as I could. And I got to the point where I started to educate on the phone. I started to be kind of an expert in the different products. So they decided that it would be a good idea to promote me into an educator, coordinator type position. And it is now my job and my position to do different videos and talks such as this to just get the education out so that people understand what's going on in the supplement industry, what to look for, what to kind of stay away from, and how to get the most out of their nutritional supplements.
So cool. Could you tell us a little bit more about what started your health journey exactly? Like, did you have any experience? Tell us a little bit more about what started you out on this health journey, because all of us out there who are listening in have this, quote, health journey going on, and I'd love to hear your experience.
Yeah, thank you. It all started, I just as a background, I grew up in Tennessee, in the city of Memphis, and in that city, there's not a lot of interest in healthy eating, just part of the culture. There's barbecue and, people are eating shrimp and just, buying from low budget, things like that, and the education about health is just simply not there as it may be in other areas of the country. So I grew up eating Hamburger Helper, grilled cheese, mom and noodles, all the things that candy,
all the
and
good
sweet,
things, all the good things.
Yeah, all of those great, wonderful things. So, as I got older, or as I was growing up even, I watched poor health in a lot of my family. Just about any kind of illness or condition you can think of, from heart disease to autism to Alzheimer's to diabetes. I've seen it all in my own family, even cancer. And I was just really inquisitive. I was questioning, why is everybody getting sick around me? What's happening? It was just kind of treated as a normal thing, and I just couldn't understand it. And as I got older, I had an aunt, actually a great aunt, she was the only one in my family who really showed me a different way. She had her master's in nutrition, and she taught me when I was younger to start looking at the ingredients of different things. So I got into this habit of looking at the ingredients of all the foods I was eating, even though I didn't understand half of the words I was looking at. And as I got older, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just laughing because this is getting into, like, you know, half of the things that you couldn't even read, and this is just about, you know, like on our topic, like a lot of these synthetic compounds, and you're like, a ascorbyl palmitate? Like, what the?
Yes.
Like, what is that? Yeah.
That was my first introduction to it. Yeah, and I'm like, what are these things? And it was just so normalized in society and in culture. And as I got older, you know, my aunt planted the seed, and I became a young adult, and I'm out here on my own. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm shopping at Walmart. I'm, you know, nothing against Walmart, by the way, but I'm getting all of my meats and stuff, you know, just on the very cheapest prices that I can find. I'm not looking for quality. I'm looking for price. And
right. And how did your health?
You know, I was young, and maybe I had the youth thing factor going for me, but, you know, my teeth, I was having problems with, you know, cavities. I would have lunch, you know, at a place like McDonald's, and then after lunch, I would have these headaches and this brain fog, and I wasn't connecting it to the food I was eating. But, you know, things started to get worse with my family. I had one aunt that got colon cancer. She did the chemo thing. She didn't make it. She passed. She died. And she was a wealthy woman, actually, this other aunt. And, you know, but she, unfortunately, cancer took her. And then I had another aunt that got cancer all over her body, and she didn't make it. And then I had my own mother. That was what really just kind of was it for me. That was the last straw. My mother got cancer. After a short battle, she unfortunately passed. And after that incident, I just started to go online. I started to read books. I wanted to know, why are people getting cancer? What is happening in our culture and our society? Because I know I heard other people's family members, this was happening too. And I just wanted to know, why is this happening? I knew it wasn't normal. I knew something wasn't right. And the more I started to look into it, I started to see that people are getting sick because they're eating the wrong foods, because our foods are heavily processed, because there's all these dangerous and harmful food additives which exist in our culture, which are banned in other countries, which really shocked me to learn that. It was then and there that I decided. It was right then and there, Tessa, I decided I want to be a part of a change. You know, this is something that I saw a big need in our world and in our country to really educate and see about, you know, protecting our food. So then I just started to change my diet. You know, it all starts with yourself. And if you want to get other people, you know, if you want to convince somebody to make a change, then you have to be that example. So
totally.
I started.
Yes,
I started changing little things about my diet. It didn't happen overnight. It started about in 2012, and as I was going along in my journey, there were times where I thought I was doing the right thing or eating the healthy thing, and I had to go back and revisit that and say, oh wow, I'm not, because of some new information that I was. And I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to this. And so
completely.
We weren't taught these things in school, you know.
No, and it's like, it is a continual process of transformation, and like, when new information comes across, you know, like comes to me, then I kind of need to like recalibrate and reassess and see like what makes sense. And like, what I think is so important is this concept of like getting back to the food, getting back to the actual things that the body recognizes, and that it has recognized since we've been, I mean, heck, like Neanderthals, you know what I mean? And Homo sapiens, like, and even back to when we were chimpanzees, or even like little protozoa, little bacteria. Like, what are the actual building blocks that make up life, you know? And the closer we get to that, the better we function. And I think that that's kind of like what you're explaining here is like, I need to get, what I'm realizing is I'm eating Frankenfood, and it's not, right? Like I'm not even eating real food. And, and this could also be causing all these cancers that I'm so sorry to hear about your mother, that was kind of like the last straw. Because, and clearly you probably had this fear, too, of like, well, shoot, maybe I'm next. And
yes. And even my father, I didn't mention this earlier, but when I was 4 years old, my father passed away. He had type 1 diabetes, and he didn't take good care of himself, unfortunately. There's been a lot of advances in diabetes. He passed in 1992, but he still ate a lot of, heavily sugar-laden things and processed foods, and he died early at the age of 40. And it's just amazing to me that, not only are people passing away at earlier ages, and we're in a modern age, but also the quality of life. I felt like that was something that I really wanted to protect for myself and now for others, too.
Oh, and I love that word protect, because, our health is the thing, right? Like your health is your wealth, and it is really important to protect it and to nurture it and to give it the best, the very, very best, and the things that it recognizes, just to give it the building blocks that allow it to be vital. And I love that word protect. So I've got a question, and I know that we can't necessarily like name names on this interview, but when you were starting out, did you see things going on in the traditional supplement world that maybe were a little bit disturbing to you? And would you be willing to share some of that information with us? Kind of like little spy work here, little Snopes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, when I was starting out, I didn't know any better. I just knew that I needed to do better, and I wanted to make sure I was getting my vitamins, and that was the
Gotta
key
take
thing
that
for me.
multivitamin.
Yeah, I started looking at that. I said, okay, I know these vitamins are important. Am I getting enough? Let me, perhaps go and get some supplements out there, like vitamin C and vitamin D and such. And so I started doing that.
Well, because you're told that you have to have these things in order to be healthy.
Yeah. And I go to the health food store and I start seeing all these different options, and I was so confused about which one to get. And started looking at different prices, and I must admit, for the first couple of years, now that I look back on it, I was actually using supplements that were doing more harm than good. And I remember, what my friend taught me about looking at ingredients. And one day I just looked at the ingredients on something I had bought, and I said, "Oh my goodness!" I started seeing things that didn't, that kind of startled me. That I'm like, why is this in here? Silicon dioxide, titanium dioxide, magnesium
stearate. Yes.
And there's a big list of these, and then I started. We got Google in this modern age, and I started typing things in. Hey, what is this? What does this do? And some of the things I saw, I was like, okay, I need to eliminate this completely, and I need to go find something that's better. And ultimately, I was like, okay, I need something that's more natural, because I realized that this wasn't. I needed something that's more whole food. I was reading a couple of articles talking about vitamins from whole food do so much better for your body than those that are artificially created. And that's when I got into the whole food vitamins and never looked back from there.
Very cool. Now, did you have any side effects from the synthetic supplements? Because now I'd like to also sort of start defining what is natural and whole foods versus synthetic. And then we're going to get a little bit deeper into why North American Herbs and Spice in particular has a better product. So it's going to be like, okay, but I'd like to first hear about your personal experience with the synthetic, and like if you had any side effects, because I know I sure did, and I'll share my piece after I hear yours.
Well, as I was saying, when I was eating the wrong foods, I was having these headaches and this brain fog and like fatigue, and I'm a young guy, and I'm thinking this is not right. I'm exercising and I'm switching my diet now. I should be seeing drastic improvements, but I was also taking these supplements that were harming, found out they were not good for me and part of the problem. And so I that's when I went back into the analysis. Fortunately for me, because this was over just a couple of periods, not even really 2 years of time, I was able to find the issue that was causing some of the minor, kind of the preliminary warning signs that the body was trying to tell me. I was able to kind of...
What were those?
Headaches, fatigue, sometimes nausea that seemed to come out of nowhere.
So even when you had switched your diet, you were exercising right, but you were still taking these, and granted your diet might not have been as totally, quote, clean as it is today, but like you were making massive improvements in your diet, but you were still taking these synthetic supplements, and you were feeling negative side effects, like the headaches and the nausea.
Yeah. And I knew something wasn't right. And I actually, as a consumer, was led, I just kept searching for something more natural. I was reading things online and from respected doctors that I admire. And I found this company, North American Herbs and Spice. And I started to make the switch. It made sense. I'm not a scientist, and it just made sense on a very simple human level that, something from nature is going to be not disturb me as much, and that it's going to give me the optimal health. And so I went ahead and made the switch. And when I made the switch, that's really when I knew that what I was doing before was not good. Because when I made the switch, I just noticed a huge difference, almost overnight, of energy and my brain just feeling like everything's clicking. No fog, no brain fog, and also the fatigue had just went away. I got off work and I would be like excited to go to the gym and still do errands for myself and not crash on the couch like I was doing sometimes before. So I saw a huge difference in my total vitality and well-being had just changed almost overnight.
So cool. Yeah, and I know for me personally, like I literally, and I speak out about this very openly, I was literally almost killed by synthetic supplements. And, I was taking I think at my height, I was probably on 30 different supplements. And and they were from guys like the best of the best companies, and so these weren't ones that you could actually these were professional companies. These weren't, you can't find in the health food stores even. So I was taking the best of the best, and what I noticed is that I was just feeling worse and worse. I'll never forget, I walked out of one of my naturopath's office and I had a bunch of supplements that they had given me, and I called them a week later and I was like, I am so tired. And they were like, well, that's kind of a good thing. You might just be needing to rest and repair. But then that fatigue just kind of lasted. And then, I started, I took the SpectraCell test, which is a really key test about micronutrient profile. And my micronutrients were okay, but they I was I'm taking a lot of supplements, and this feels I don't understand why I need to be doing this. But the kicker was I had been diagnosed with macrocytic anemia, aka megaloblastic anemia, which is where your red blood cells get humongo. Okay, they get really, really big. And you can actually, for people listening out there, the way you can tell this is if you look at your basic CBC blood panel and you can look at your MCV value. And if that MCV value is around 98, you're starting to verge on megaloblastic / macrocytic anemia, which is severe B vitamin deficiency, usually stemming from folate, B6, or B12 deficiency. Now, each year, like my red blood cells were just going up and up and up. It was like 98, 99, 100, 101. And I was taking 15,000 milligrams of vitamin B12 per day. And it was from the best company. I was doing it sublingual, which is, according to studies, just as efficacious as intravenous. And it was the right form. It was hydroxycobalamin, and I don't react well to methylcobalamin. That's a whole other conversation. But, I was having, plus I was like, supplementing with synthetic magnesium and synthetic this and synthetic that. But one day I was on a hike, and at this point I was having crashing panic attacks every day. And I started to kind of link this to taking my B12. And my B12 status and my B vitamin status was not getting better. It was just getting worse. So by the time I had my blood tested last year, my MCV value was 104. And I can tell you for sure that it's a very uncomfortable condition. But one day I was on a hike and I had taken my B12, and over the course of my hike I started to have severe brain fog. I started to lose sensation in my body. I started to not be able to breathe. My blood pressure was severely low. My heart rate was going probably 40 beats per minute, and I was hiking up a hill. Okay, so everything was just going offline. And I started to have a severe panic attack, and I drove home and I called my dad and I said, I think I'm going to go to the emergency room. And he was like, no, you're fine. If you need to go, you can go. But anyway, I lay down on the floor, breathed through this panic attack. And at that point, I had gotten rid of all of my other synthetic vitamins and supplements. And I was noticing a massive improvement in my health overall. But then there was this incident with the B12. I was thinking that I had to keep taking this B12, because I'm B vitamin deficient. And it was just so scary. But then I finally made it a deal that day, and I said, I'm done. I am done with these synthetic supplements. And I stopped the next day, and lo and behold, my panic attacks within 3 days were probably about 70% better. And then I made a dedication to just get my nutrients from food and whole food compounds natural North American Herbs and Spice and a couple others. And I made this dedication to myself. And then lo and behold, again, panic attacks started getting better. Digestion started improving. The fatigue started getting better. I started detoxing better. And then the big proof in the pudding came to me when I went to the doctor and I got my blood drawn. And I saw that my MCV for the first time in 5 years had actually gone down. And that's when I was sold, because I was like, this number has not ever improved, no matter what I did, no matter what I ate, no matter how I took these supplements, it never improved. And then finally, when I made that dedication, everything, it improved. And then my liver panels came back normal, my kidney panels came back normal, blood work just started getting better and better. But that was not until I made the switch to letting go of all my synthetics and switching to food and food-based compounds. So, I was like, wow. This is a topic near and dear to my heart, because I was totally legitimately almost killed by them. And anyway, so so this is a deep topic, and So anyway, with that being said, I guess and thanks for letting me go on a little bit of a tangent there. I get really passionate about this topic. So, yeah. And that's why I'm so thankful to companies like yours that you and others out there who are doing the right thing and promoting the products that actually work and are like, hey guys, like this is just basic to human functioning. Like what we, first of all, you've got to address diet, which we'll get into later, and you have to start with the basics. But then to have these additional compounds is such a blessing. So when you were in the synthetic supplement world and you started to see, oh, okay, these ingredients on the label, I can't pronounce them. And, oh, when I come off of them, I feel better. Then how did you start to, so now, explain to us the difference between the synthetics and the natural compounds and why these natural compounds are more efficacious, safer, and enhance your detoxification abilities overall.
Yeah, I'd love to, and thank you for sharing that personal story. It makes me think how ironic it is that a synthetic supplement can, cause so much problems for you, and then really, the whole food, we know that the whole food B complex is actually very supportive for the nervous system in those areas that, you had the anxiety. And recently I spoke to somebody who had depression who was using a synthetic B, and they weren't getting anywhere, and then they used the whole food B complex, and it's like a total difference that they can feel to help them. And so it's amazing to me.
Totally.
And
it's like, yes.
It's just amazing. What it comes down to is, you have the synthetic, okay, and to speak on that, what's happening there?
Tell us like what makes these things synthetic. So like what is the definition of a synthetic supplement? And the way that tell me if you agree about this. Oh, sorry. So tell me if you agree with this. I'm kind of like, you walk into any health food store, and unless it says it's a whole food-based supplement, which then we can get into even more of the details, which we will, and why all whole food supplements are not created equal. But unless it says whole food supplement, it's synthetic. Yes,
and to elaborate on that, to keep it, very simple to understand. Synthetic is basically anything that doesn't come from nature. So if it doesn't grow on God's green earth, it's synthetic. And if it's an ingredient that you can't pronounce, 99.9% of the time it's synthetic. And if it's made in a lab and not grown on grass or on soil or on rock or, outdoors where the sun is there to nurture it, you have the energy, the trapped energy from the sun present at the time of harvest. If it's not, that's natural, but it otherwise, it's unnatural, it's synthetic. And there's a growing number of synthetic compounds. It's been going on for quite a long time. Why is this happening? There's different schools of thought, and some believe that the synthetic compounds boost absorption and, are okay, and that they, as long as you can match the chemical composition of something, that the body will not recognize the difference, and that it's easier to do and environmentally, easier on the environment, saves food and things like that. Also, there is the profit factor. So we have to address this because a lot of the industry is driven by profit. Our whole world is that way. And if you can make money off something, and think about celery. Celery is great. We know it's good for our health. But nobody owns celery.
I love celery juice. Right, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned blood pressure. We know that it can be naturally supportive of that. And but nobody owns celery. Nobody can have exclusive rights to it because nobody made celery. No man made it. It just grows. It's just here. But if you can take a compound and you can isolate it out of celery, and then you can add something else into it, inject some kind of bacteria or something into it that causes a fermentation process to make something new, you can basically own the rights to that, and every time somebody buys it, you get to make money, and nobody else can sell it because it's your product. And so this is just, a result of capitalism.
Dark. It's so dark.
Yeah, it's just a result of people wanting to make money, and unfortunately, it's at the cost of others. So that's really, it's kind of the society we live in today. It's just something we have to deal with. But the simple answer is always get from whole foods, always get something that's grown from the earth and not made in a lab, and something you're familiar with. Not vitamin C, for example. There's ascorbic acid, and then there's kiwis. And of course we make a vitamin.
Well, and also like you can get into the other various forms like ascorbate or like ascorbic acid, or I think like for me, like the key indicator, because I'm basically like, how can we spot the synthetic? And it's really like, again, if you look at the label and say, like, okay, I'm gonna go take a vitamin D supplement, for example, whether it's D2 or D3, and you flip it around and it will say a particular kind of form, right? That's not derived, like, unless it says it's like, this is from mushrooms. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, like, the main forms of vitamin D.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because that has to be listed on the label. When you see it, that's how you know if it's a real vitamin A, B, C, D, E, or if it's a synthetic, because the synthetics have their own names. You usually see those in parentheses on the backs of the bottles, so that's how you know whether or not it's or fake.
Exactly. Like it'll say like, calcitrol or calcitriol or, calciferol. It'll say these different types of forms. Yeah. But it's not saying like, okay, like this is vitamin D and then parentheses shiitake mushroom, right? So like, yes, or like vitamin D in a fish oil, for example.
Exactly. The fish oil, if you look at our label, it says vitamin A and vitamin D, but that's all. We just put that because that's all you get. It's just real. And what you're
part
getting
of the fish oil. It's part of the fish oil. It's not. It's not like what we're trying to like. It's exactly. It's not isolated. It's not chemically extracted from some, something we don't even know where some of these things come from. But it's not just like chemically extracted. It's just inherent to the fish oil itself.
Yeah, and if you think, if you'd like, I can talk on the chemical extractions.
I'd love that, because
that's another thing to look at.
But just to kind of like cohese really quick, the synthetic is, again, basically if you walk into any health food store, and unless it says whole food based supplement, it's synthetic. And if you turn the label around and it says, vitamin D3 from, like I was just saying, from cholecalciferol, I always get that backwards, cholecalciferol, and unless it says, or like, methylcobalamin, or that's, the main ones, right? Vitamin A from its various synthetic forms. So unless it says that those are all synthetic. And then you've got the natural whole food forms where it would say like vitamin D from mushrooms, or it would just be like vitamin A and vitamin D inherent in a really quality fish oil like you guys have. Mm-hmm. But then, so yes, okay, so we've got synthetic versus natural, and I think we've got that pretty well defined. Now I'd like you to get into how these synthetics are made and why just the process of making them is dangerous.
Yeah. Sometimes and many times what you get is a coal tar process. They're made from petroleum-based chemicals. And so what happens here is that now keep in mind, these are being made in a lab, so they're just manufactured. They're not grown. They're not created. They're not harvested. They're literally making a chemical reaction in a lab. And you, a lot of the times, have these petrochemical, a lot of times high heat so often is used, like hexane, for example, very commonly. And we know that heat tempers things, kind of changes molecular structures, and that's why you've heard the term raw, so you're dealing with petrochemicals, you're dealing with high heat, and you're getting that along with your supplement, so you're getting a synthetic form of something. And many times we want people to understand this too, that there's various cofactors that are involved in whole foods. So vitamin C, for example, you get the bioflavonoids, you get the different fibers that are necessary to absorb it, as opposed to a ascorbic acid, which is just one single isolated part of a whole food vitamin C that's boosted up to very high levels, which the body is totally not used to getting. And then
nowhere, I always say, nowhere in nature would you ever be ingesting 1,000 milligrams of B12 at once, unless you ate an entire elk on your own, right? You would not get that. And so then your body just gets so can you tell us a little bit about how these massive doses of things, of the synthetic supplements, can cause imbalance in the body?
Yeah, and you just mentioned it, nowhere in nature can you find this, and nowhere in history can you find this either. So our bodies are just not used to this. And the body is very intelligent, right? We know that. I think we can all agree. It's an amazing design, and a lot of the times it puts a huge burden and stress on the liver, because it all comes down to, it goes through the stomach, and then it uses what it can. You can use a small percentage of that maybe, and you have all of this left over. You got 90 plus % of the B12, for example. The fake B12 is left over, and then it goes to the liver, and the body wants to reject it. And the liver wants to take care of it. And now the liver is working overtime because it's got this huge dose to get rid of out of the body. And that's why, if you ever noticed that you drink, if you take a lot of multivitamins or, B12, for example, high doses, and then the next time you go and use the bathroom,
it's neon yellow.
Your pee looks like Mountain Dew. Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
That's not normal. And you're like, what's going on here? And that's what's happening. It's trying to get rid of this.
And
it's not usable.
Right. It's not usable. And then your liver actually has to detoxify, if I'm correct on this. It has to detoxify the synthetic supplements first, because it doesn't recognize them. It needs to turn them into, it's what? And it because of the solvents too. I mean, these are inherent, and the extraction methods. These are just inherent toxins. And
right. The liver is in contrast to what the liver, it's going to either think, okay, this is good, this is a natural compound, or this is noxious or toxic, I need to get rid of it.
Right. And I need to detoxify it. And then the liver, just so everybody's very clear out there, the liver detoxifies preferentially. So it goes after the compounds that it deems the most toxic first, right? And those are usually things like alcohol, toxins like, like synthetic compounds and these artificial. I know alcohol is, like, you could say, like, alcohol is not artificial, but it is one of the major toxins for the liver. So the liver detoxifies preferentially. So it's going to go after the things it deems as the biggest threat first. So it doesn't necessarily preferentially detoxify things like mold or parasites, because it's too busy and overloaded with the other, like, heavy hitters that are coming into the system, like the petrochemicals, like the VOCs, like the like mercury from amalgams. It'll preferentially try to detoxify those, and then it's just kind of like, okay, well, no wonder some people aren't getting better from other things in their system, other pathogens in their system, because their liver is already so overburdened.
Right. Yeah. Let's say you're taking dandelion, which we know is a great kind of natural detox aid for the liver, and you're doing a detox, or you're doing a green juice, and there's money involved in this, and there's time and sacrifice into this. You're not eating other foods for a while, and you're spending your time and effort into this, and you want to give your liver full reign to be able to fully detox. And unfortunately, you don't want it to have to compete with other things that are actually accumulating, where, like you said, preferentially, the liver is going to take care of those toxins first and then get to the other good things you're trying to give it.
Great. So explain to us how the natural, so let's get a little bit more detailed. So now we've got the synthetic versus natural, but now even more detailed, how do the extraction processes of whole food supplements differ from one another? And what is this problem with the heat extraction versus cold, like CO2 pure extractions? How do those two differ from each other? Because now we're getting real detailed. Yeah. So for all you nerds out there, health nerds out there, like, let's jam it out. So now there's different extraction processes for the natural. So explain the difference of those to us and why it's important, and how this relates to enhanced detoxification. Because as we were saying, in talks before this interview, what's really happening in our bodies when sickness occurs is inflammation at the cellular level. And inflammation impedes detoxification, because when you're in a state of inflammation, your body is not in rest and digest. It's in a fight, flight, or freeze state. Well, fight, flight, or freeze state causes the inflammation in the first place. But this is inflammation at the cellular level that we're talking about, which impedes detoxification. So, the goal is to decrease cellular inflammation. And these synthetic supplements cause inflammation in our body just by the nature of how they're made, and because the body doesn't recognize them. So, but then you've got the whole food extracts and compounds, which work synergistically. Yeah, and then they help create healthy inflammation response.
Yeah, I'd love to address that question, and also just agree with what you're saying. I'm sure we all can agree with each other that nobody wants to have a natural supplement that they went and spent their hard money on that is going to contribute to that inflammation. We want something that's going to deal with that inflammation. And we have
support
two examples. For example, the fish oil, like good quality, unrefined, unfiltered, unheated fish oil will do that. The omega-3s are great for the body's natural inflammation response. It has an antioxidant called astaxanthin, which, by the way, is destroyed if you use heat. That's why a lot of the times you see the fish oils and you have, one that's pink and you have one that's bright yellow. The pink
or
is
white.
the astaxanthin. Yeah, the
or
pink
clear.
is the antioxidant. And so you need that orange, pinkish color, especially in a salmon oil or something of that nature. It has to be like that, so that you can get the antioxidants and that everything is still preserved. So in our extraction processes with North American Herb and Spice, our number one goal is always preserve what is in nature, keep it intact, do not lose anything, and certainly we don't want anything that's going to have any kind of noxious problems in the body. We want it to be 100% healthy, not 80-20 or 70-30. It needs to be something that can address inflammation and not contribute it. So that's why we really stay away from heat as much as possible. In everything that we do, we have many raw extractions. That's so key. And the CO2 extraction is one of our favorite extractions for that reason. There's different types of CO2 extractions. And what that is, CO2 extraction is carbon dioxide extraction. And you can still use heat with that. So what you always want to look for, this is commonly found, by the way, in hemp oil, is a supercritical CO2 cold extraction. That's the best extraction you can possibly get for a hemp oil.
Why is that? Yeah,
that's
so
because,
explain to us why it's important to have this CO2 cold extraction.
So that's, number one is you don't use heat. And that's so important because once you use heat, you're going to lose something. And when it comes to hemp, you want, and many other things.
And what do you lose with heat? Because so on my channel I talk about like the importance for particularly like raw meat versus cooked meat. And you brought up a term earlier about denaturing. And
yes.
A lot of people are like, what the hell is denaturing? So the heat extraction, explain to us how the heat extractions destroy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so think about hemp, and in its raw state, when it's first harvested, it has a certain molecular structure, like all things do. And the key to hemp is you want to get some of those cannabinoids, terpenes, across the blood-brain barrier so that they can interact with the receptors in the brain and give you the benefits that you're looking for. For example, help you with stress and anxiety and so forth. When you heat it or denature it, what's happening is you are changing that molecular structure into something completely different. And what happens is it doesn't get across. It's not flexible anymore. It's no longer malleable. That molecular structure is now kinked, and it has more difficulty getting across. So it's blocked by the blood-brain barrier. It's too hard. It can't get through. It's not flexible. And so you lose something every time. And the other issue with heat and denaturing is this. You may have heard of the term full spectrum with hemp. That's a marketing term that's all over the place. What that means is you have everything in that plant is still intact. So you have the cannabinoids, you have the terpenes, you have the waxes, the sterols, and even the chlorophyll. Everything is still there. However, when you use heat, something is always lost. So terpenes are burned off, they're cooked, and what this does is it doesn't, because you've lost something, it's no longer full spectrum. So what you have to ask yourself is my hemp oil supplement using heat? Don't ask if it says full spectrum on the label. Find out if they're using any heat. Because you think about this, you have a full tank of gas, and if you drive 15 miles down the road, is it really a full tank of gas anymore? And what you need is 100%.
Really awesome. That's a great.
You need 100% of that plant so that it can do its job as nature intended.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
And so
essentially, okay. Oh, go ahead.
That's what we achieve in our extraction process, and that's our number one goal. Is we need to give people we need to preserve as much of that nature in the final product as possible.
And basically this just gets down to like thinking like logically and thinking back to kind of like primally, like how does the body work? Like, yes, people may be individual, but we all have the same cells. The cells function the same. Okay? And yes, we might be being bombarded with, things that our ancestors weren't bombarded with, but the process of detoxification remains the same, no matter what no matter what assault is on the system. Right? The process of detoxification is the same. The process of inflammation is the same. And when you give the body the compounds that it recognizes, because just at a cellular, biological, primitive, primal level, which is food, and then, so I'm just trying to like cohese this all back, then the body actually will function properly because it's being given the raw material that it recognizes, that it can actually, exactly. and then it has all the cofactors, right? And then you don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm taking this amount of B12, that means I need to balance it out with this amount of synthetic B6, and then I need to balance it out with this synthetic form of B3, and because then I have to balance all of this out because I'm just taking the individual little bits. And when you have a whole food-based form, especially like you said, it's so important about the cold extraction to keep the molecular structure the same and to keep it from denaturing and turning into some kind of Franken molecule, then you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about the imbalances because all the cofactors are present in that compound already. So it just creates a state of balance right away, which is what our body is looking for in the first place, is a state of balance. And these, that's like where, a healthy immune response. These kinds of whole food compounds create a healthy immune response or healthy inflammatory response, and they help they don't put a burden on your liver and your detox organs because your body doesn't have to detoxify them. It knows what to do with them because it's in the form that it recognizes, and it has recognized since time immemorial.
Yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel. Nothing has changed. The human body is the same. Nature is the same. It interacts inside of our bodies the same way. And there's nothing that we need to do as humans to really change anything other than to preserve it and make sure that we are, of that mindset, really, because what I'm seeing in this industry is really, it kind of breaks my heart.
Oh my God!
Because I'm seeing a lot of companies trying to reinvent the wheel, and or cut corners, and that's not going to bring us back to our optimal health.
Right, and it's really just about getting back to the basics, and of course, we do have to say that you can't just take a supplement and expect to feel better. Like, you have to address the diet first. You've got to address lifestyle factors. You've got to address stress levels, relationships, connection, mental state. You have to address these things. But the product, yeah. So I mean, like we can agree on that.
It's definitely a lifestyle.
And I think you gave a great example in conversations previous. And I'd love if you could reiterate that about, how certain people will come to you saying that, oh, this product's not working, and then you ask them a particular question.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we get that sometimes, it's easy to kind of want a magic bullet or a magic pill or just something that's going to just work real quick. But a lot of times first of all, it takes time. It takes time to kind of fight back, against whatever maybe years that have gone on that have caused, the current state and issues of the body. And I just gave an example of somebody who had issues with battling candida, or the overgrowth of fungus, and they were using our flagship product, our oil of oregano, for that. And they were using it for a couple of months, and they called back and they said, hey, I want my money back. This isn't working at all. I don't have any changes. I haven't noticed any difference. And first question, they were saying that it just wasn't doing the job. It was supposed to work, and it's not working. And my first question was, hey, what does your diet look like? Can you walk me through what you're eating? Are you consuming sugars? Are you doing like sodas or candies or, cakes and pastries? And they admitted to me, well, yeah, I have the occasional, soda and donuts and things like this. And that's the moment that I had to explain to them, hey, this is your diet. This is 80% of your diet. You're eating all of this food, and 80% of the things that you put into your body is your meals at mealtime and your food items, and your supplements are just a small percent. And so the oil of oregano has to work against the donuts, and it's just,
right.
It's not, that's what's happening.
I have this image of like oil of oregano against the donut being like, and then candida being like donut, and then the oil of oregano being like, I'm trying, like, but you're not giving me any
you got half a dozen donuts,
here.
and half a dozen donuts, and a few drops of oregano oil, which it is powerful, but the body is going to take whatever you give it and distribute it accordingly. So we know sugar kind of feeds the fungus, so you got to take care of that. And like you said, it's all diet. And all of our supplements, by the way, are all food-based. And we really believe that food is really the greatest therapy that you could give. It just has to be the right food.
Right. And from the right sources. We could get into that into depth. But, what you're saying is that, yes, these compounds that you guys have, these supplements that you, because I don't even like the term supplement for what your company does, because to me supplement is like, again, the synthetic, right? And so what you guys are offering are additions to a healthy lifestyle. They're not Band-Aids, right? They're not Band-Aids. They're helping your body. They're acting as support and as a means of creating more resiliency and creating healthier cells, rather than putting a Band-Aid on the problem and then creating imbalance and then creating more problems in the long run. So I usually say compounds that you guys create. That companies like that yours create. And I think that you gave some great examples, again, of the hemp oil, because you all have a cold extract, CO2 extract, and pure extract of hemp. And I know personally I love it. It definitely feels very different. Also, you also gave a great example of the fish oil, because I know that, when I was looking at some of the fish oils at the health food store, even from some of the top companies, I was like, these look pretty, I don't know, and then they didn't feel good in my body. Like I would actually feel like more sore when I woke up in the morning. And unlike yours, which is, like you said, it's extracted, and sorry to any animal lovers out there, this is just the reality, but you said that it's extracted from the brain of the salmon, and it is pink, and it does feel different. And it tastes like salmon, like it tastes like, like I take the salmon and I feel different with it. Like I just feel different because it's not heat extracted. And again, especially when you get into things like fish oil and oils in general, if any, heat extraction with oils is super bad. Super bad.
Yeah.
So
one of the biggest thing about fish oils is the antioxidants and the omega-3s that you're getting, and heat just cooks that off completely.
And it's not even, it doesn't even take a lot of heat. It's like if it's only over 104 degrees.
Correct.
So,
it's very vulnerable to heat, and that's why it can go rancid very easily in those processes.
Totally. Oh man. And then we get back to inflammation. It causes inflammation in the system because inflammation is just a response. It's just a protective response. And and then it impedes your detoxification. And again, when it comes to the, just kind of to wrap up, and I'd love to hear, your kind of final thoughts here. But okay, so we have the synthetic supplements and we have the natural compounds. And then even more detailed, we have the best way to extract these compounds versus the ones that cause denaturing. And it's so important to give the body the raw materials and the forms with the cofactors that it recognizes, because then it works synergistically with the body and it's supportive versus harming the system, causing imbalance, increasing inflammation. And this is why it's so important to get back to the roots and get back to the basics of food, lifestyle, and all those other things that we were talking about. Like, it's about just lifestyle in general. And then using the best compounds with the best extraction methods to be supportive of the body and work synergistically with it rather than against it.
Yes. And, I really thank you for having me on. And, I just want to highlight, we don't get taught these things in school, and this information is so important and valuable. We're talking about natural foods and supplements, remedies that we're putting into our bodies. And so we have to do the legwork. We have to investigate. If you have to call the company up and ask them what their extraction processes are, what is this ingredient that I can't pronounce, those kind of things, it's so important that we do that. Because at the end of the day, this is your hard-earned money. And,
and your body. It's your body.
It's your body, and you only get one body, and you don't want to put money into something, very least you want it to, not harm you, and at the most you want it to do what it says it's going to do. You want it to work.
Right.
If you buy something that harms you or could cause an adverse reaction, that's worse than throwing your money out the window, because at least there's no problems in your body when you do that. So if you're going to spend your money, and sometimes, you may have to spend a little bit of extra money on a supplement that the company really went through, went the extra couple miles to give you something that's pure and natural and, to the letter.
Well, and it's going to actually work. Like, this is the thing, it's going to actually work.
Money that way. Yeah, it's not a waste of your hard-earned money. And that way you're supporting the companies that are really thinking about your health and not cutting corners. You're voting with your dollars here, and that way those companies will succeed. And the ones who are not living up to our expectations, they won't succeed, or they'll be forced to change their practices. And we'd really like to see that change for the future, for all of us.
Which is what I mean, and, I just have to say that, I love North American Herbs and Spice because, and I'm so thankful that you're on this interview, and I'm so thankful for companies like yours, because I only, personally, I only feel comfortable advocating for the companies that I feel like have heart and the products that are not going to do any harm. The Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm, and I take that very seriously as a practitioner. And your products don't do harm. And
absolutely.
Right, and they're supportive, and plus you guys were like small mom and pop people, you know, and it's not, you're invested in the right values. And that to me is like the most important. That's so important. And I love that you are all about education. And, you know, guys, just so you know, Steven, before we started this interview, was like, we have to educate them. And I was like, I know, like, that's the whole thing. So I encourage all people listening to do your research. And, you know, just like Steven did his own research when he was going on his health journey, you know, that's what started me on this journey. That's why you all are listening to this. I encourage you to call the companies, ask them about their extraction processes, you know, and it's so important. And
by the way, if anyone has a question about one of our products, do let Tessa know. And if she doesn't have the answer, I will make sure that I give it to her so she can let you know, because we want to be transparent to you.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, Steven, is that we're here to support anyone out there listening. And please reach out to me for questions. And also, if you're interested in any of these products, please reach out to me. I can answer questions and place orders for you. We can get you on a good, solid plan. And I will have Steven and NAHS for short, North American Herbs and Spice, to advise me to give you the best recommendation possible with the best information. So please reach out if you have any questions or concerns or needs. And Steven, it has been a pleasure and an honor. And
likewise,
all
Tessa, thank you.
Oh goodness, no, thank you. This is a topic very near and dear to my heart, as to yours. And I know that everybody out there only wants the best for their body, because it's the most beautiful gift that you've been given. So you need to give it the most beautiful support that you can. So thank you so much. And until our next interview, Steven, we will talk again soon on another topic. But thank you to all my Enliveners, and I love you all so much. And to anybody else who is just watching for the first time, please subscribe to the channel. And I'm just so excited about where things are going in this world, and that we're on this frontier of good. So thank you so much.